in different aspects. And the topic is measuring your platform. Anyone else read the chapter? Had a chance to read the chapter?
I skimmed the I'm sorry, what do you call it? I skimmed the repository in GitHub, and I haven't done the exercises, but I'm going to, because these are new tools I just don't know about.
Yep.
Maybe
So,
I should. Maybe I'm the last one to learn about it. But this is very interesting to me. This is a
no,
good resource
not
to
a
learn it.
lot of
Yeah.
people know about this, because this is a space where there's no defined standard, and some
Yeah.
people do it, and people that do it differently or have done it in the past differently. And he has like 2 examples. That's why people do it in different ways, or don't measure, which is a problem. So yeah, let's get started and have a discussion.
I read it as well, and I feel the same way with Jack. Like, I really want to put my hands on the tooling.
Yeah. So the chapter starts explaining what DORA is, which is the DevOps Research Assessment. This is an assessment that was done. He said that he's going to cover basically. I highlighted this because it was understanding how the platform is performing. We need to able to measure it. And I think I tweeted today. Somebody was asking about platform engineering, and I think I responded with that. Let me see if I can show my Twitter 1 second. And I posted. Somebody was asking Darren Shepard. He's the creator of K3S. He asked like, "What's the biggest challenge in platform engineering these days? How everyone's medical IDP going?" I answer, at least for conversations I'm having with customers, is generally believing the biggest challenge is measuring the impact of investing into a IDP, which is for the platform, not portal, but a platform, and actually having metrics to track the improvement of that platform as people adopt it and enhanced. I can add that to the notes. And that's what I answer after reading the chapter. So that happened today. I'm like, I have thoughts, because I was just reading this book, which is that's the problem of, like, when you're building a platform and you don't measure it. When somebody in your organization says like, "Is this platform good?" You answer like, "Yeah," but you don't measure it, right? So the critical thing is to measure how you're doing your platform. And before we had the terminology, platform was DevOps. So that's why DORA is the DevOps Research Assessment. I think he has a link. It was done in 2020. Yeah, he's in 2020. And then there was a 4 key areas. I would say the key 4 areas for DORA. And there was one, I think he added that there was a 5th one added in 2022. I don't know, was just an update to the assessment, or they did another full assessment, but another one was added for focus on reliability and operational, added to cover operational performance. So focus on reliability. He didn't put a link. I was looking for it. Somebody has a link to the DORA metrics or DORA assessment. Let me see if I can find it in Google. I don't think it's
I'll find it.
I don't think it was a is it DORA.dev?
Yeah.
Or this is not the official one?
I don't know if they have an official one.
The Accelerated State of DevOps report. I don't think this is because there's many, like DORA is used in a lot of places. I think I found a link from the CNCF working group for platform engineering. They point out to they were looking at DORA, explaining the maturity model of that. That's also related to DORA. Like, how do you CNCF? And next week, we are doing a stream in the platform and CNCF platform working group. There's a tag, and they have a maturity model that talks about this topic also. So if you want to learn more about measuring a platform, which is like measuring the maturity of the platform, the performance of the platform, how well it's doing, or the impact that it's doing. The CNCF working group, I can add this to the chat. Also, they have something called the platform engineering maturity model, and it goes over like what is platform engineering, how to use this model, understanding the levels, and then the table of like the aspects of investing. Let me put this on mute. Investing, adopting, interfaces, operations, and measurement. So see measurement here. Let me see if this points to the DORA metrics. No, I think this should point to the bottom here. So the model details. So measurements is like kind of like what the book is talking about. And then what level is your organization at? Are you a level 2? Are you a level 3? Are you a level 4? So level 2 is your you have consistent collection of metrics. You're collecting metrics, but might not be doing anything to it. Level 3 is that you're getting insights from those collection of metrics. Level 4 is like you're doing something to optimize with those insights, and then doing quantitative, qualitative optimizations to it. So that's like nirvana. I think that's the 4 levels for every area of how you measure. How do you see how your maturity is in platform engineering? And the other aspect is like, how do you operate it? What's your API? Are people adopting it? And are you investing? So Mauricio also is involved with the working group in the CNCF. So he's also involved with this type of white papers that are being done. And then there's a interview coming out soon. They're doing interviews to companies about platform engineering to do kind of a report on this, on like use cases. Anyone was aware?
So question.
Go ahead.
So question. Well, maybe this is is anyone aware? If my company is doing this, I don't know about it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I can imagine this is a discussion that splits between vendor and DevOps team. Is the DevOps team at a certain maturity level, and is the vendor at a certain maturity level? And I was wondering if this discussion here makes the distinction, because I imagine an OpenShift product person would say, yeah, we're at the highest platform engineering level because we have all the bells and whistles. Or maybe this is saying, no, this is a practice that DevOps teams have to follow. And whether they turn on the bells and whistles or not is really what this is about. And I wonder if you had a perspective.
It's the second one. So and as you read the white paper, they say like the intended audience for this like CTOs, engineering, like people, the practice, like you said, the second one of the user.
Okay.
The vendor is like you're buying a product that enables you to be mature or not. The fact that evaluating if that product meets the criteria, what is the quality, or they're like goals or standard to help you meet the criteria. I think that's a different evaluation of vendors. But this one is a model where it's for the end user, for the company doing it, and also it can be used like you said, it can be useful of like these are the things that we want to achieve. And when they're evaluating maybe 2 vendors, they say like which vendor or which component of each vendor will help us get to the next maturity level, right? But yeah, this is for the end users of like starting by measuring what level are you today, and then how to get to the next level. If that makes sense, in the different aspects.
Just to complement, there are even some things that you can do with regards to the maturity model that are really not tech bound. For instance, I think they suggest to do blameless post-mortem as a common thing. That's really a process, right?
Yeah, process.
Right. You can have a tool that simplifies it, but it is a process.
Yeah. Capabilities, right? The characteristics and examples. So this one is around security. So they don't point out any tooling also in this report. Like they don't mention like this tool, you would use this tool for this aspect or that tool for that aspect. They just they keep it at the like you said, I think Jack said practice, right? DevOps practice level of it. So yeah, this is another good read if you're looking to learn more about platform engineering, which the book is about. And the last chapter of the book, if I can go back, it was measuring your platform, and then that's why I wanted to bring in the working group paper, because it talks. There's a big section around measuring. And Marisa, what it did with the book was go pick the DORA metrics, which some companies use. I think I can find the link, but there was another company that did kind of like the enhancement of DORA metrics to have more keys, and it depends how mature you are. I think it was maybe Netflix, but I'm not sure. But there was a blog that they took the DORA metrics and saying DORA metrics are not enough metrics to measure. Like it's a good starting point, but it's not enough for when a company gets as a scale that they need to measure more things. But for a beginner person, just to understand that the aspects of these primary ones, I think is more than enough, and he was able to cover a full chapter with this.
Yeah, so I downloaded the PDF. It looks relatively short, and I'm going to read it just so I get better versed. It's 20 pages, I guess, so I get better versed in the subject. Thank you.
Yep. You mean the white paper?
Platform engineering maturity model
Okay.
from the CNCF. Yeah.
Oh, it's downloaded as a PDF. I always go to the website. Yeah. Good.
Oh no, I
Yep.
just downloaded as a PDF just so I have a file for
You're
stuff like this.
Yeah,
And
you're smarter than me, Jack.
this is worth reading. It gives me a better vocabulary. I'll read it and I'll sound like an expert. So thank you.
So yeah, the two there are four, and so they're he divided us in two. One is like velocity metrics, and the first one is deployment frequency, which is how often you have a successful deployment. The second one is lead time for change, which is the time that it takes a change produce an application team to reach customers, like make it to production, make it live. So those are like how fast this velocity metrics. So that's another term that also you can search online of like velocity. I sometimes even forget to mention DORA, but I just call them velocity metrics. And if you search for that, you'll find a lot of documentation and blogs around it. And the other one is recovery metrics, which I personally use or for searching or looking for it. So it was something that I learned here. And then one is the change failure rate, which is the number of problems that are created by new change being introduced into a production environment. So it's kind of like around quality, measuring to a certain degree the quality when you are making a change to the project of like you want it to get to zero, like the rate of like failure is zero, like you don't get errors out into production. And then the other one is when there are errors and you have to fix them, how long does it take you to recover from the problem? And this might be, if you have done SRE, right, it might sound familiar to the RTO and MTR, like type of metrics that are in SRE and operations, of like time to recovery, backup and recovery strategies, and those type of things. But in terms of like applications, which the book tries to be like the web app that we have, the conference app, as the aspect of it. And then he mentioned in 2022 that they added a one for reliability. So yeah, he goes over about like capturing the metrics. So the deployment frequency is something that you can capture in a deployment environment. He talks about the Kepton. It does it that way, or you can measure it on the CI/CD pipeline. When the CI/CD pipeline deploys, then you can capture an event, or like put a timestamp, or capture like count the number of deployments, so you can know like how often you're deploying. That's for deployment. I wanted to mention something else. At some point, he also points to a blog from CodeFresh. Just wanted to highlight. This one is also, I read it this morning. He pointed out from his book. And one of the things that they go over the same metrics. And one thing that I found interesting was the deployment, capturing that deployment that it says, I think it's here. You can see. It says that some people say like deploy hourly or daily or weekly. And it says that the DORA group recommends dividing the deployment frequency into buckets. So you don't have to be in absolutes of like, to say like, if somebody does a survey and asks you, does your company deploys daily? You might answer, no, we don't deploy every day. Well, don't measure it like that. Measure in buckets. So it says if you deploy more than 3 times a week, then you can say you're doing daily deployments. You fill into that bucket. Or if you deploy successfully 5 out of 10 weeks, like average, right, more, right, dividing, then you can say most weeks. So it falls in the weekly deployment bucket. So I think it was, at least for me, useful to know this, because sometimes you get asked the question, or you ask the question, and people may say daily, and you may think every day, but it's like you have to take the recommendation into place. So good blog post posted by Mauricio here, and I think the author what's the author of this blog post? I think it's an article. Is it David? I'm not sure. Yeah, so that was a good article posted here. The other one is lead time to change. So this one is it involves at least in this he says measuring from the artifact repository when new software gets there, meaning like it has a bug or feature. How long does it take to go from in Kubernetes land, right? You create an image and it should be immutable. You should not be modifying it for every stage, or like doing a rebuild or a Docker build. Like you build the image once, and that's the image that you use in test, staging, QA, pre-prod. Somebody has pre-prod 2. I know people that have a pre-prod 1, pre-prod 2, until actually they find production. So how long does it take to get into production? So lead time to change. So one of the factors that would increase the lead time to change, what would people think it is? Is it testing? Or is it what? Any ideas? What would increase the lead time to change from like having a container image to make it to production? What would be like the most typical bottlenecks?
Approval. The famous my manager needs to click the button.
Because your manager is the one doing the testing. Yes. So your organization have managers doing testing. So yeah, approvals. Sometimes not the manager, but it's like the SRE team, right? Or that
the process itself, the release process, being
the release process,
the security checks, doing everything manual that has to be done.
You got it. You got my one.
Change events, change management, all of that.
The ticket. So I think Sevi got one, the one that I was looking for, manual. When things are done manual and not automated, that's where like the most time takes. Because opening the Jira ticket, that could be automated. You can even use chat GPT script for that. Like when there's a new build and like open the ticket, the testing could be automated, right? So what things cannot be automated, or what things you have not automated yet that you're doing manually, that's the biggest bottleneck. So that's one area that I work, that I dedicate all the time to help customers, is like finding the biggest bottleneck. And the other one, I think Sevi said, right, release process. So I have worked with end users and also in companies myself, where we release to production because in my case, we had good reasons of shipping in a certain day of the week. Because maybe you were doing canary testing, or we ship the product and we have to have a week of like smoke, like until it like works well in one region versus, and then we produce it to other regions. And this is another company, not the AWS one. It do it differently. But it's really, so imagine yourself that you work very hard over the weekend. We ship on Tuesdays, and you work very hard, and then on Monday you send your PR, and then your coworker is busy on something else, and you ask your coworker to merge the PR, and he's busy on Monday, and then he does it on Tuesday morning, and then it gets merged, and then the image is created. Is Tuesday at 1 p.m. It's too late. You missed the boat, so you have to wait a full week to the next Tuesday because they're already like shipping to production. So that will give you like a full cycle of lead time to change, and it goes back. But again, those are the things that could happen, and that's okay, because then it gets picked up on the next week, hopefully, right? Because that's if you're shipping weekly. Anyway, that wanted to highlight that on the lead time to change. And some people measure it. I think he does it later. We talk into it. They measure that lead time to change is like when the image gets created and tagged and put into the repository. And some people measure it from when the issue got created, or when the code commit. So looking for the commit SHASM into the release note or the release document, getting that, or in the database, to find like, then you can actually measure like, well, this commit happened. And commits are like recorded, that the timestamp from Git when it was pushed to a Git repo or something. So when that Git SHASM got created, and it might be like more time to get an image created, but at least the source code. And it depends where you measure it. If you measure at artifact time or Git. The other ones are more like operations, SRE, like if something goes wrong, you have monitoring in place, somebody comes in and reverse the change or fix the problem, move forward. And then you measure how often are you getting errors by how much frequency new builds cause errors, right? I'm measuring that. But I think that's a very common case that people are aware of how to do that. And also operations team have a lot of that in there. Then he covers integration problem, like how to integrate all these things. And he mentions like that he wanted to follow the principles of the book. We need a solution that is like a generic enough that it can work on any of the cloud providers, and use Kubernetes as a baseline. So this is the book is around platform engineering on Kubernetes. And he mentions the CodeFresh blog post that talks about the DORA metrics. But then that he says in the beginning, he's going to cover cloud events combined with CD events, and then kept them. So let's go into cloud events. So the idea is to use cloud events to record that when a pipeline gets deployed. So things like you can do it from Tecton or Dapper. All these utilities work with even Argo events. You can capture those as cloud events. And if you don't know what cloud events is, I can open the link here. I don't know if it opens a new. This is cloud events. It's a specification. It has some SDKs for libraries of like the schema and the payload, how to package that. And it works with, I think it has a diagram here somewhere. Works with HTTP, Kafka, like they're here. Like the cloud event specification works with AMQ, HTTP, Kafka, NATS, JSON, XML. So they have ways of the transport specification, and then the fields. Here's the picture. At the top, the cloud events metadata is things like the ID, the type, the source of the event, the spec version of the event, and then the things inside is the cloud event payload, which sometimes the payload is not standard, but at least they standard of some of the metadata. But the information inside, it would depend on what is being transported in the payload. And then he says that for like measuring our app DORA metrics, doing this for his example, he's using Knative eventing that has sources to grab events or grab notifications through it will convert a webhook like from GitLab or GitHub into a cloud event and then put it somewhere. And he talks about using Postgres database, SQL database, or it can pull the API, the Kubernetes API events. There's in Kubernetes, if you do kubectl, kubectl get events or events, there's objects recorded in etcd. So using Knative eventing has a source that will take a Kubernetes event and then convert it into a cloud event. And then the Kafka and RabbitMQ are the other examples that he has. And then this is where it's showing like the event sources. So things like pipeline, it will be the recording of the deployment. Repositories is maybe for the time that the Git commit happened or the pull request got created. And then application infrastructure, which is like when a deployment is in ready state, right? A new revision of the deployments. When you create a new deployment or change something, you want to release a new deployment, a deployment revision gets created. And if you do kubectl get deployment revisions, you will get a list of revisions. So that's an event that gets created and you can capture, and that tell you like to measure like the deployment frequency.
Okay, so open telemetry and cloud events are two different things, right?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So open telemetry is for monitoring systems, right? So logs, metrics, and traces. Those are the three things that it handle.
Okay.
And then cloud events is a way of like passing information from an event-driven application standpoint. Usually like a pop and sub, like publisher and consumer or provider and consumer type of systems. So
Okay,
in this
so there's
case,
no events in open telemetry then, right?
I want to say yes and no. If you go deep down into open telemetry, there's such at least in tracing, a trace is an event that gets captured that has information that's stored in a database. So that's how a trace happens.
It's okay. I'll study it.
Right?
I'll study it. I was just curious because I've learned all about open telemetry. Now I knew about Kubernetes events. I just didn't know that it had been generalized and standardized under cloud events. I'll read about it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was a working group in that got created. I was one of the co-founders for that.
Cool.
Also, it was related to they created a working group for serverless and a working group for cloud events. The same folks were like involved in all of them. And he mentions like some cloud providers and some systems have support for the cloud event schema and support. But he mentions also that the cloud events payload I mentioned, right, was very generic. Like it's an event of like something got created in GitHub or like pull request created, okay, or like deployment ready, okay, but that didn't translate directly to a DORA metric. So that's why he mentions now the CD event, which is continuous delivery foundation. And this is a foundation, it's not the CNCF, but it's under the Linux Foundation. So it's like the CNCF is under the Linux Foundation. This foundation is also under the Linux Foundation. So both are under the Linux Foundation. And the continuously delivery foundation, it covers other projects that the CNCF doesn't. And I think where's the list? And one of them is the CD events. I think this one they also cover Jenkins. I'm trying to look for the list of projects and I cannot find them now. But CD Foundation has members stored. I think Jenkins is part of this. Tecton might be part of it. So the going back to the book, what he's saying that is the cloud events is kind of generic. The CD events has a schema or specification of for creating and a vocabulary of stages, like core events, meaning like a task run or a pipeline run, a source code version control event, like a change created, a change merge. So it has the same dialect. Continuous integration has events. So an artifact, a build, test case, those kind of the stages that are covered and the subjects. and then continuous deployment, which is things like services deployed or environment is modified, and then the terms of like services and environments, and then continuous operations, which is running the system. But this is the category of the CD events, which now can be a kind of a standard for like on DevOps type of events. And if if a system or two systems use CD events, they have a way of communicating each other because they would understand the type of events that they're referring to, which are like for continuous delivery. So CD events, I didn't know much. I learned today more details about CD events. I was not very familiar with CD events, so the book gave me an overview. So as you can see up here, the CD events calls the environments. All these things support the CD events. He points to a YouTube video. They talk about Tecton implementing CD events. I think it's under experimental. But they talk about the ideas of using Tecton for this. And what else? I think he moved to the example. Oh yeah, so the example, and he has it in his repo of he's going to implement for the app conference app. He's going to implement CD events, and basically he has a diagrams over here. So he's going to take Knative serving to take events from Kubernetes API server, GitHub, RabbitMQ, and then he's going to collect them. They're down here. So these are like the sources that he's using, like GitHub API. GitHub will be for like when there's a change happening to source code. An API server will be like with something like a deployment, and he's going to take that and put it into SQL database. Let me see where he does that. I think this is explaining on how to get an event, how to create a source out of like Kubernetes events into cloud events, and then down here. So he takes an event, which is a cloud event, and he will save the cloud event into a database, and then he's going to run through a batch job or cron, taking information, transforming it, and converting into a CD event schema and put it into the same database as an additional table. So I think he talks a little bit there. So he would take the information from cloud events into CD events and put it into this type of functions, transforming them from cloud events to CD events for the different stages. Like where he gets to the database.
Add events for the different stages in your contacts.
I think Siri, wake up. So these are the DORA metrics. So he's taking CD events now, and since now they're CD events, he's matching them to DORA events: deployment, lead change, change failure, time to restore, and then putting it back into a database. Like storing these events, they become metrics, and then you can have a dashboard calculating. Like he's doing a calculation with those events, and then putting the results into the database, and that they become metrics. And with metrics, you can see here, they become a dashboard. So they went from CD events. He creates a function to structure them into like insert this into a deployment. Then he can know like how often are you deploying this app, and it's using SQL, like normal, like select from deployments by day and service. And then from the database, he can get a dashboard. I don't think he has a picture of the dashboard, but he has the working example in his. This is the repository that he uses under chapter 9. He has the information here, and then he has, as all the chapters, he has instructions on how to do the kubectl apply. On all this works in a client cluster, and he shows you how to install Postgres and create the tables. And then he has this is the pictures from the book also, like the cloud events being converted into CD events, the CD events in the database converted into metrics, and then having a dashboard, or like now you can like query for the metrics of like those velocity metrics or recovery metrics out of the database that he's putting the information in. Yeah, this is the picture that was there. Um, and then he talks a little bit more details on how he's storing the information in different tables in the SQL database. So it gets a little bit deeper into the details of the information of the events, how he's storing it, what information he's capturing into the cloud events. Let me see. Yeah, this and in this part, he just explaining how event sources are being created using the Knative eventing API. So you can have an eventing API that talks to like here's the example. I think I mentioned this example. So in Kubernetes, he's capturing events, and the way that happens, he wants to know how often the deployment happens. So when a new deployment happens in Kubernetes, an event in Kubernetes gets created. You can do kubectl get event. That becomes a Kubernetes event stream where the Knative API source code is capturing that information for Kubernetes and then converting them into cloud events. You can also do this with Argo. So in Argo events, not Argo CD, don't get confused. There's a project called Argo Events. See if I can open it. Have somebody seen this project before or heard about this project, Argo Events?
Not until the book, actually.
So yeah, Argo Events is something that you can create the same concept of when something, if this happens, then do this. So they can capture an event. It could be a webhook, right? An HTTP coming into an Argo event. An Argo event will basically by using a CRD or YAML file, it will bring up a pod that basically connects to something to put information, or can receive something. So in terms of a webhook, we're receiving an HTTP request. And then from that, as you can see at the bottom, then do X. Like when this happens, do X. So it can create a new Kubernetes resource, which is the one in the middle, which it could be like when this happens, create a config map, or when this happens, create a Kubernetes job, or the one on the left. I'm using my mouse, but I know the one on the left is, you see two Argos here at the bottom with a year at the end. Actually, those are like workflows. So there's a project called Argo Workflows. Then you can connect like something like Git through a webhook. When you create a pull request, for example, or you commit something to GitHub, then Argo Events will receive that HTTP request, and then Argo Events will create a Argo workflow, which is basically like launch a Argo workflow that will do something about it. So it could be like a build an image or scan an image and like start doing your CI/CD pipeline. And the last one is like an example of Lambda, but it has multiple. It's called targets. And then you can see that here there's multiple triggers. Like it's not targets. Sorry, is actually no. The triggers are created for the event sources, and sorry, the triggers are kind of like the target, the thing that you want to create a trigger, and then event sources is like 20 plus sources. So it could be, I think they support Kafka and cloud providers and all these things that you can capture. So that's why the reason that he mentions that in the book.
In the GitHub repository, he gives an example with Keptin.
Yep. So that's the next one. So
okay. So that is another one. There's a lot of things new to me. That's another one that's new to me. Is Argo's familiar, but Keptin isn't.
Yeah, Kepton was new to me until this morning when I was reading.
Okay.
So Kepton, this one is using cloud events. Let's go to the section of Kepton. I think that was the next one. Yeah, called Kepton Lifecycle Toolkit. So basically, it has a cool picture here. So it looks like Kepton works with the Kubernetes scheduler. So whenever Kubernetes scheduler is going to schedule like a pod, like a new pod to be scheduled, that's an indication inside Kubernetes something new is getting deployed. So what they do is they implement kind of like a can target that event that happens, and then that will go and observe it, and then send that information into metrics and traces, and then you can have something like Grafana, or in this case Jaeger is a GUI, both a GUI and and a collector of traces, but it can create metrics and traces of those events happening in Kubernetes around deployment, which is just deploying a new pod, for example. So you can see here on the top right, it has the deployment. That's the Kubernetes scheduler handling deployments. Well, actually handling the pods of the deployments if you want to be specific. And then it says like Kepton has some way of specifying pre and post hooks. So those pre and post hooks can do something actionable, like maybe notifying to Slack or anything that you want to run. And he has an example here of out of the box when you install Kepton and then Kepton gets attached into your Kubernetes deployments, then start sending that information to the Kepton collectors, in this case, Prometheus and Jaeger. And then this is Grafana showing you the dashboards out of the box. So Kepton is a project for DevOps. And that's what they do. And they don't use the cloud events, but they said he wanted to show like a different way of doing it without events. You can put like kind of an agent into the Kubernetes cluster where it attaches to Kubernetes objects, that then it can emit the events. Like this is Jack, why I was saying that OpenTelemetry works on metrics, traces, and logs. And you were saying like OpenTelemetry has events. At the end of the day, what OpenTelemetry is doing is creating an event. It happens that the event is a log line, or the event is a trace that gets created. The metric is a little bit more about collecting over time information. So it's not quite an event, but traces and logs are by definition an event that it's something that happened at one time that doesn't change, right? It's immutable. An event is something that happened at 10 a.m. this morning. You cannot change that, right? That's an event. So I come from a background on event-driven applications, a lot of Kafka in my days. So that's an event that nobody changes. That somebody did a transaction with his credit card at 10 a.m. this morning, and that's an event, right? It's an immutable piece of data with a timestamp. That's why I have problems answering the simple question.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. There's a domain called CD events, and under the scope of CD events, there's a whole different
for DevOps
way of managing it.
Yeah,
for DevOps. Yeah, that's okay.
Yep. So yeah, Kepton is another project. People don't know Kepton is under the CNCF. I'm not sure. It might be on incubation or something. I know it's open source, and they give talks, but I should know if
I
it's.
feel like I saw the sticker on the.
Oh, it's under the Linux Foundation, so it's a trademark under the Linux Foundation. It might be under the CD Foundation, right? Might not be CNCF, but it might be under CD Foundation. But it's a part of the, and that's something maybe I can give them feedback or something. Usually in CNCF, I work for free, I guess. I'm a CNCF ambassador, but in CNCF we ask projects to put at the bottom or someplace in their page to put an indication that you are a CNCF project and at what level, your sandbox, your incubation, or your graduated. Also, it would be useful if this is a Linux Foundation, put CD Foundation if they're part of the CD Foundation. But yeah, this is the website, kepton.sh. And I love, I did a lot of SRE pass in my life, and I love Jaeger and traces.
Carlos, it's in CNCF landscape, Kepton. I just checked.
It's in there's like 20,000 things in the landscape, but there might not be CNCF.
I don't know if they're merged with the CD landscape though, but this one is incubating under tag app delivery.
Oh, really? Okay.
Part of CNCF foundation.
So they should put so that's why in CNCF we asked them to put that. There should be a line at the bottom saying with the logo of CNCF, say sandbox and something. So thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, because I remember seeing the sticker in the sticker wall. Definitely.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they're CNCF and incubation or sandbox?
It's incubation.
Oh, even better. Yeah. So they're in the second level. And I was going to say they have traces, and this is I love traces, like in general. And then this is where you can like track back of like finding your bottlenecks, right? That's basically what traces are for the majority. Is like debugging a system or an app, in this case your DevOps, finding where's the bottleneck of your DevOps pipeline. For example, in here you will find that it's like building a machine learning image takes 2 hours, I don't know, because they have a bunch of files and you have to compile and get those, transfer those files, or the scanning of the repo, or git cloning a massive amount of files, could be, or just running the tests, unit tests or integration tests. Like you will know like what are your bottlenecks in your
Well, just the
DevOps
title
pipeline.
life cycle operator says a lot. So,
Life cycle
it's an
operators.
operator for doing life cycle. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's it. What they cover with and they have evaluations, something called evaluations, which allows us to make decision on event gate. Like, do not allow to deploy something based on evaluations. It sounds similar to Argo rollouts. So Argo rollouts is another project.
Mhm.
Argo rollouts also can give you like metrics and evaluations to deploy or not deploy, and then send a notification, and that could be an event. But Argo rollouts will have that feature also. There's a lot of projects in the DevOps space for Kubernetes. Yeah, so this is how Kepton works. And then capturing the information. So I think this is just his summary of what's next on platform engineering journey, right? What are the next things you can do? So in this aspect is closing kind of the book with of having a platform that has metrics, has observability, release gates and monitoring, creating the golden path to create a pipeline, to deploy to an environment, that you can have container as a service, and creating that golden path for the platform, and creating development environments, which was one chapter of like giving a ephemeral development environment. So just development environments that developers can quickly spin up their apps and don't have to be the production environment. They don't have to touch the production environment. And then it talks about Argo and GitOps. We covered that in the book. And then he finished his thoughts on the book. And then I highlighted understanding how strong the communities behind these projects are is key to validating that they're solving a problem. That first needs a solution is common enough to solve generic problem and not organization specific ways. So yeah, using open source, and then this is a website that evaluates kind of like give you like a grading to an open source project. I think that's it. That's the last thing I for this chapter was talking about velocity metrics, recovery metrics, to measure your platform, and two examples, one around CD events and the other one using Kepton, if I could summarize it. Thoughts? Opinions? That missed some of the questions in
So
the chat.
are organizations implementing DORA compliance? And for those of us who do other compliance work, compliance is, you almost have to staff it, have dedicated people, because you have to have metrics, you have to be able to audit, you have to be able to verify that you're following what you say you're going to follow. Like several other ISO standards and things.
Yeah.
Is that what people are doing? Is this a cool idea that's taking hold, or is this, is this already a practice to where people are implementing it as part of a compliance
People
workflow?
people are implementing it and not using the word compliance, I would say.
Yes.
Right?
Until
So
someone says prove it or demonstrate it to an outside independent party, and then it becomes compliance.
yep.
Or don't use the word compliance, and it has to be traceable and auditable. Yes,
Yep.
very
If that's
interesting.
but again, the DORA part and the metrics is just the part of answering the business question of how good are we creating software? or how fast are we? Are we very slow or very fast? How do we measure? How long does it? Normal DevOps or SRE practices, right? So that's why it's
Mhm.
difficult to like make it a compliance or a regulatory thing. I think that for that it's easier, more common to see the security side of the house in terms of data. You're using FIPS, for example, or you have a
Right.
FIPS environment, or
Right.
your air gap, or your FIPS 142. Those are more common to like establish, but this one is, are you deploying your own software internally like once a week or once a month? And that's to the customer or your people using your software, your website. Really don't care if you're deploying once a week or twice a month. But this is just efficiencies inside your company or how well you are doing software,
Mhm.
right? The same way of like how many errors you're introducing when you're developing software. Maybe you need to increase the amount of testing that you do, right? Again, another thing that is not compliance. The security one is like more critical one because actually affects your customer. Like if it's like software you're selling or a service. The other one is efficiencies, I guess. But yeah, people are doing it. I would say the answer is people are doing measurements or their platform. They might not be calling it DORA, or maybe they're doing even more than DORA. Some organizations that are high scale, but people are trying to measure their effectiveness of delivering software. I would
Mhm.
say I tried not to use the word platform because then that's very like ambiguous, but their efficiencies of delivering software or creating software. But yeah, something that in terms of DevOps consulting, DevOps conversations, DORA always comes up as when people don't know whether this area at all, like they don't know that it exists. At least that's
Mhm.
homework to start reading on it.
Yep.
Good question, Jack. Anyone else? I think we're over a little bit, but
Yeah, I'm really pleased that this chapter makes it tangible. This DORA metrics that floating in this space and like explains how you can actually use them with like find some tooling around it and just make it like working. So yeah, I think it's really connects to like separate things.
yeah, metrics, right? Metrics,
Yeah.
metrics, and a dashboard that you can say, see this dashboard is all green. Last year was all red because and people say, why is it green now? Well, because we staffed 2 people, right? We increased the amount of people, and that's why it's green now. And if you want to make it like it, and that's like bad or green, but it's instead of being a gauge, it's like how often or how long does it take you to recover from an error? Well, last year was like 6 hours. This year's 2. See why is 2? Why is it 2? Oh, because we staff more person. Like, or we invested more time on automation than creating a new feature,
Yeah.
right?
Also, it gives you this chapter, it gives you a great, starting point to implement these metrics before you invest in a tool, because there
Exactly.
are so many tools around the space that says, okay, we're going to fix your DORA metrics, but I don't know my DORA
Metrics
metrics.
are
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, so before investing in, maybe you start small, use these tools, and just
so you're saying like if a consultant comes in, I think this is post book conversation.
yeah.
Consultant comes in, I'm going to sell you something that will increase your deployment frequency by 10x, and they ask you like, what is your current number for deployment frequency? You're like, we don't have one because we don't
Well,
measure it.
okay. So the process is going to be they're not going to sell you. They're going to sell your boss.
Yes.
They're going to sell your boss, and
Also,
your boss is going
without
to tell you.
also
They're-
without organizational change, how would that actually work is something else to discuss. But yeah, if you
Mhm.
don't know what your release frequency is, how would you increase that?
Yeah, Jack, you were going to say something about
I
the
was going
boss?
to say they're going to sell your boss, and your boss is going to tell you to do it.
tell you to
Because
like get the deployment
dude, what's
frequency
your
number.
DORA metrics? Because I just hired a consultant that told me that because we don't know our DORA metrics, we don't know the effectiveness of our organization. So it gets sold at the top and pushed down. And so I don't know. It's maybe it's an incentive for people to implement it from the bottom up and to preempt.
Yep. Yeah.
So you
That's
already
what
have your act
people do.
together. Tell your boss you already have your act together.
Yep. Exactly. Well, thank you folks so much for attending today. I think we had a good quorum. Hope that you enjoyed this session. I definitely enjoyed the session
And the book,
discussion.
I like, and this is the it for the book. It was nice. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing the book.
Yeah, and also Mauricio is in Twitter, LinkedIn, social media. So if you like the book, add a comment. We're going to post a LinkedIn page post in the Kubernetes book, and you can like put a comment on there, like tag him. We'll tag him, and he will see like if people enjoy the book and such. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Next week is
Okay, very good. Thank
crossplane.
you.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride with you guys. See you next week for the crossplane book.
Yep. See you folks. Have a nice weekend.
Have a nice weekend, everyone. Cheers.
You too. Bye.